closed session.
I have that motion. Do I have a second? I have a second. Get all that done.
Could you repeat the motion, please?
All those in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, let's go to closed session. We'll be back in a little while.
Literally.
Yep.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I'm starting a minute or two early by this clock, but mine says that it's 7:01 and I'm a little late. Glad you all are here. Hope you all are having a safe summer. I would like to call this meeting to order. And with that, I will pass it to Mr. Guzman for the invocation.
Thank you. Let's bow our heads and pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. Thank you for being here with us. You're welcome in this place. Thank you for this last season of school. And thank you for all those who have graduated and so successful in Union County Public Schools. We ask that you watch over them and guide them in their futures. It's such an honor for all of us to be part of this system and helping our children succeed. We ask that you be with us this evening. We ask for wisdom and guidance in the decisions that we make. We ask that you watch over us as everyone here tonight as they go home from this place. We ask all these things in your name. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just like to mention that I lead that quite often and I never get the little pin. Everybody else gets a little pin for that. Yeah, that would be nice. Maybe I could put my handprint on it.
Dad, don't.
Yes, I agree.
Chibi.
And now we're to the approval of the agenda. And I have no changes to make. So do I have a motion to approve?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. And a second?
Second.
You want to raise your hands, please? Was that Ms. Helms? Okay. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you. The agenda has been approved. And this saddens me a little that our next item is public comments because normally we give out the John H. Crowder Award now. And then we give out a lot of different awards to students for academics and teachers and things like that. And we don't have that during the summer. So we'll move straight to public comments. I can see I'm boring all of you, so we'll hurry. Public comments are 30 minutes has been allotted for public comments. Community members wishing to speak during public comments should state their name, their address, their phone number prior to making any comments. The board will not here in open session. Complaints about the performance of school personnel, personnel issues, confidential student issues. Individuals may address the board for a maximum of 3 minutes. Any person who is representing a group may address the board for a maximum of 5 minutes. Should a community member wish to seek information or share items that may not be shared during public comments, our deputy superintendents are available to address your concerns or provide information. Our deputy superintendents will stand as I introduce them. Dr. David Clark, Superintendent of Human Resources, and Dr. Mike Webb, Deputy Superintendent of Instructional Technology and Operations. And with that said, if you'll abide by the rules, I will ask our first speaker to come to the front of the microphone. That will be Mr. Bill Helms.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you for a few minutes. My name is Bill Helms. I live in the Sticks neighborhood, a couple of miles down the road from here. Now, all of my neighbors and appreciate you sharing a few minutes of your time with us. And a good many of my neighbors are here seated to the left of me. If you'd all stand for a moment just so they can recognize you. We come before you requesting just a few minutes of your time and requesting that we be placed in the Parkwood School District. There are 17 homes in the Sticks neighborhood, and the petition before you has been signed by every household in our neighborhood. It's a small neighborhood, like I say, consisting of only 17 homes. There are only 2 streets in the neighborhood, that being Sticks Drive and Tar Heel Drive. Tar Heel being very short and whole Sticks Drive not being very long. In support of our request, I'd like to point out to you that buses that go to Parkwood already come into our neighborhood. The land that backs up to our neighborhood and the houses that back up to our neighborhood all attend Parkwood. If you go down Helm Shortcut, all that land that backs up to Sticks subdivision, including all the homes down there, go to Parkwood already. So the buses, I don't know if it's 1 bus or 2 buses, but I know they pick up students that are on Helm Shortcut, and they already come into our neighborhood because that's where they turn around. They utilize Sticks Drive and Tar Heel Drive, and we verified that that's where they are. And I have a tendency to go for walks in the afternoon, so I personally seen them there making the turnaround in our neighborhood. So it's our position that there's no additional cost or burden to the county for us to be placed in the Parkwood School District because the buses are coming there already. In the past year, there are no children in our neighborhood that attended public schools. About half of us that live there are retired. I don't think we like to consider ourselves as being old, but I'll acknowledge that we were at least on the backside of middle age. So we're getting there in a hurry. If you look at the way it's been districted out there, we're like an island that exists in the Parkwood School District already. I don't think any of us had any input into districting. I'm not here to criticize how it was done, any way it should have been done, because we had no input in it. You folks have a tough job, and I'm not here to criticize the way it was done, because quite frankly, I don't know how it was done. But I do know that if you look at the map of the districts, we are an island within the Parkwood district, and it's all almost like to the right of the map, Italy juts out across there when you look at the map. Because if you go down Wolf Pond Drive, It is actually in the Monroe School District, but yet it cuts across part of the Parkwood School District. So the buses appear to be going to Monroe, but crossing over the Parkwood District to get to Monroe. And I'm not here to say whether that makes any sense or not, because like I say, I didn't have any input into that decision-making process, and I'm not here to criticize in any way or fashion when it was done. By your own resolution, which was signed a year ago tomorrow, you've reserved unto yourselves the latitude to make minor adjustments to school attendance lines to preserve small neighborhood groups and to prevent isolated traffic patterns and inefficiencies. Granting our request will not create any isolated traffic pattern or inefficiencies because the buses are already coming into our neighborhood to transport children to the Parkwood schools. So it's our position that granting this request would not be anything more than just a minor adjustment. Yes, sir. What's that?
We're over 5 minutes. Can we wrap it up?
Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up. So that's our position. So I'd ask you to ask yourselves this question. Is there any good and valid reason not to grant the request? Now, I know that you're in a difficult job. You get a lot of criticism from the public, and I recognize that. But I'd ask you to consider that you hold a position to exercise your own independent judgment of everything that comes before you, including our request, and to consider each request on its own merits. And I know that you may have in your mind that if we grant one request, that it opens a floodgate to other requests. But I'll reiterate that I'd ask you to consider this request on its own merits and exercise your own independent judgment. And I appreciate your allowing us to spend the time before you. Thank you.
Our second speaker will be Ms. Bass, Nora Bass.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask a question before we move on to the next speaker? Has staff
May I ask me
had,
a question?
well,
Yes.
it's summertime, so let's just take, has staff had any opportunity to review this request? Is this just fairly recent?
We'll discuss that later. This isn't. a good
Is it on
time
the
for that
agenda?
discussion.
Is it on the agenda to
No.
be discussed?
No, it is not. But we normally don't discuss any requests brought forward by public comments. It's our turn to listen and formulate the questions we'd like to ask. And if you have a question for staff, it would be best to send that to staff at a later date as you formulated that. Okay? Thank you. Ms. Bass?
Hi, my name is Nora Bass. My address is 2671 Nelda Drive, Monroe, North Carolina, 28110. My phone number is 704-635-7673. Hi, my name is Nora Bass. I am back to support the need for cameras with audio in special education classrooms. I will continue to speak out because every child deserves justice. I cannot put into words how painful this has been for my child and our family. After my daughter's incident, I started a petition to require cameras in special education classrooms to include all resource rooms and therapy rooms. And at this time, I have 100,577 signatures and rising. I have spoken with several parents concerning the abuse their children suffered while in school. It ranges from ear pinching to hair pulling, verbal abuse, unexplained bruises, marks, broken bones. I have spoken with teachers that have commented on the petition and in the news station comments. There are several teachers that have seen the abuse and support the need for cameras in special needs classrooms. They do not wish to come forward because they fear retaliation behind closed doors. The Government Accounting Office released a report to the Congressional Committee of Labor and Education about the treatment of special needs children in public schools. The report was shocking and should be a matter for national concern. What is shocking about the report, What is shocking about the report released by the GAO is the fact that these children with disabilities are being harshly disciplined, resulting in significant injuries, including deaths. Special needs children are unnecessarily being restrained in school at an alarming rate for minor infractions. Disabled children sustaining injuries at school is occurring at an alarming rate. Of the 100 of the cases GAO reviewed, at least 20 instances of restraints and seclusions resulted in the death of a child. Texas has heard these awful stories of abuse and stepped up and passed the bill for all special education classrooms, resource rooms, therapy rooms to have cameras with audio. I asked you today to take a stand and lead the way for North Carolina to pass the bill as well. Allow the placement for cameras with audio in all special education classrooms, resource rooms, and therapy rooms in Union County. The safety of our children with disabilities, verbal and nonverbal, is in your hands. You have the power and the resources to keep our children safe. I can't stress enough how much our children with disabilities are depending on each and every one of you to keep them safe. I pray that you will see the urgency for cameras, and when the time comes to vote, you will all support our children and vote in favor of cameras with audio in all special needs classrooms in Union County. Thank you.
Also, too. I think our next speaker is William Bonney. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Is it Bonney?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is William Bonney. I live at 7701 Conifer Circle in Indian Trail, North Carolina. My telephone number is 704-930-3341. I am also here on behalf of the supporting cameras with audio in special needs classrooms. I'm the father of a 5-year-old nonverbal autistic child. His name is Billy. He's an amazingly affectionate and loving child. In addition to his autism, Billy is also hearing impaired. He's been attending a special needs pre-K classroom for the past 2 years and graduating into kindergarten this coming school year. We're all very excited for this, and it's going to be in a completely different environment. In the past year, we've had different incidents, one involving insects. My child was left alone long enough for him to ingest over 24 insects in a classroom. When I asked the teacher through text messaging, we were unable to get an answer. In the vomit, I don't know if you're familiar with roly-poly bugs, you know, the ones that roll up into a little ball. We had to end up taking him to the ER. The doctors were shocked. We were questioned as in why he was left alone long enough and why he was able to ingest so many insects. We were unable to give them an answer, simply because we didn't know. He was out of our care at the time. Now, Billy is also working on potty training. He's 5 years old. He's not fully potty trained. We actually have to send a supply of diapers to school with him. Halfway through the year last year, we had changed the brand of diapers because we had at least a month's supply left at the school. We decided to let them finish that out. So he had 2 different colored diapers, green ones in the morning from when he went to school and blue ones at school. We were finding that he was coming home smelling of urine every day up until this point. We had no idea why. Until the day it was March 4th and March 19th, he came home in the green diaper, which means he was left all day in a urine-filled diaper without being changed. The past year, we've also been noticing a bunch of bruises and scratches that one picked up from school. And we always asked the teacher, and we were always given the I don't know answer. Or we're given an explanation that makes absolutely no sense, as he was climbing a tricycle chasing insects. I don't know if you all can see this here. That is from a wall that he fell into. That is on the inside of his arm. Had that actually been a wall that he fell into, he would have it on the side of his face and his chest. It goes from the inside of his arm to his armpit. So these are the explanations that we get that we don't understand. Next, he was found with a large bruise the size of a handprint on his back. We weren't given any explanation for the cause. We've been looking. We looked into possibly going to go through a legal source for this, but we were told without Billy telling us exactly what happened, there's no case. If a child has no voice and is unable to express what is happening to them on a daily basis, how am I as a parent supposed to protect them when they're out of my care? The state has cameras in prisons and jails and in their jails to protect their inmates. Why can't we have them in our special needs classrooms to protect innocent children? As a parent, I'm outraged with the school system is more worried about protecting any child.
Your time is up. Would you wrap it up, please?
Yes, yes, sir, absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm outraged that the school system isn't more worried about protecting mine or any child. Cameras will give us the proof that we need to weed out those whose actions are not in the best interest of our voiceless children, whether by physical, verbal, emotional abuse, and/or neglect. With all continued support of the parents and the community, over 100,000 signatures strong, we are asking you to give our children a voice, to put cameras in special needs children's classrooms. Thank you.
Ms. Amy Oster.
Amy Oster, 4507 Smithtown Road, Marshville, North Carolina, 704-624-4158. Why is it that in 21st century America, a world in which nearly everyone, wherever we go, is under some kind of surveillance, that those who run our public schools believe their most vulnerable students should purposely be denied this same protection? When we speak about placing cameras in any classrooms, it seems as though the excuse of privacy concerns is the number one reason for not doing so. Courts have spoken on these very issues. In Roberts versus Houston Independent School District Texas Court of Appeals in 1990, the Texas Court of Appeals held that a teacher did not have a reasonable expectation of privacy in her public school classroom. In Plott versus Board of Education, in 2007, special education teachers sued their school district after the school district installed audiovisual recording equipment in their classroom. The court concluded that the teacher's expectation of privacy was not reasonable because an entire classroom in a public school building is not reserved for the teacher's exclusive private use. Then comes the question of students' privacy rights. The U.S. Supreme Court has already declared that students or staff have no expectation of privacy in a public school building except in a restroom, locker room, or changing room. The only other law concerning privacy is the FERPA. The U.S. Department of Education issued a letter to the Educational Law Center regarding the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. It states, FERPA prohibits a teacher from disclosing information from a child's education records to other students in the classroom, as well as prohibit a teacher from disclosing information from a child's education record to other parents of another child who might be observing in the classroom. Further, FERPA does not protect the confidentiality of information in general. Rather, FERPA applies to the disclosure of tangible records and of information derived from tangible records. Parents have to be allowed to observe their children in a special education classroom to be full and equal participants in the development of an appropriate individualized education program for their children under the IDEA. Furthermore, any placement suggested by the IEP team, the parents have the right under the IDEA to observe such placement. So, if privacy is such a huge issue for students, why are cameras anywhere else? And how are students even allowed to leave the classrooms for anything? How do we even have school yearbooks that identify everyone? Children with disabilities do not have greater privacy rights than non-disabled children. To claim anything related to legal or privacy concerns for not placing cameras in special needs classrooms is just another excuse for not facing the truth. Biloxi, Mississippi has them in all 500 of their classrooms with great success since 2003. Okay. Many of our law enforcement here in Union County, along with Sheriff Adi Cathy, support placing cameras in special needs classroom. All of Union County jails are equipped with cameras in order to protect both officers and offenders. If UCPS, okay,
We're out of time.
okay,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. Item number 7, we have the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve? Oh, I'm sorry, open session minutes for approval. I still like the motion.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Gesman. And second. All those, we have a second. Ms. Boyd, I'm sorry. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? We're good. And now we're up to number 7, the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, sir. I have a second? Second. I do, several of them. Thank you. All those in favor of the consent agenda, please raise your hand. Say aye. Aye. Opposed? None? Number 8, the superintendent's report. Dr. Ellis?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and happy summer break for those of you in the audience who are parents. First of all, I want to commend our almost 3,000 graduates. Graduations went off in the main without a hitch. There were a lot of happy people, and I wish our graduates well. Some of them are already off to the military. Some of them are already off to summer school somewhere. Some of them are in jobs, and others are waiting to go to college. So I wish them the very best life has to offer. Our graduating class of 2015. Board members, I want to make you aware, if you're not already, that Union County Public Schools will be hosting the North Carolina School Boards Association regional meeting. And please go ahead and place that on your calendar for September the 24th. That's a Thursday evening. Former chair, Mr. Yurchek, signed you up. It's the only way I know to say it. And so we're going to host it. We do have plans to host it in the Porter Ridge cluster. I believe we've settled on Porter Ridge High School, and we have a planning meeting tomorrow. And we will have between 200 and 300 school board members, superintendents, and staff from Region 6. So we will be getting you more information as we get closer to it, but we've confirmed the date and the location, and we're in the planning stages, I believe, tomorrow. We're starting that. I did attend last week the superintendent's quarterly with Dr. June Atkinson, and I will tell you that while it's summertime, the school is going to start in August, whether there's a budget passed by the state of North Carolina or not. And it looks now that there will not be a budget passed by the time school starts. I'm hearing that October, if we're lucky, before we have a state budget. In the budget that was the resolution, the continuing resolution to keep offices open, they did not discuss teacher assistants, and I will tell you the Senate has $5.3 million in teacher assistant cuts statewide and over $8 million next year. And I'm not going to knee-jerk on that because I think the House treated teacher assistants very fairly. The Senate's gone over here, and somewhere in the middle, minds will meet. So Union County's plan is to continue with our teacher assistants as we have now. We already turn over $3 million from teacher assistants into teachers to have reduced our class sizes to keep them where they are. So we will be hit, but we will not be hit as badly as some other districts. With regard to driver's ed and the budget, we were directed to use funds available to continue driver's ed. Well, okay. The state has also informed us that we are being cut in our low wealth funding by approximately $750,000. And you know, from the county's budget, they did not fund our charter school appropriation, which is a little over $500,000. So I'm not sure where I'm supposed to find $993,000 for driver's ed. To that end, we have in Raleigh a request to do all online instruction, and you've heard this. We have refined it, and I have sent word that Union County will do online classwork And that's how we proceed, but we will not proceed until we get clearance from Raleigh. So we're in a holding pattern on that. I hope to begin that as soon as they'll give us clearance. And the budget is sort of a wait and see thing, but I don't want anybody, please, to knee jerk on this with regard to the state budget. It's not going to happen today or tomorrow. I do have a meeting with Representative Craig Horn one day this week to talk about some things. And, my question has been, is the Senate, is it a bluff, or is this where they're really going to land? And I don't think anybody knows the answer to that, but we're making plans for best scenario, middle scenario, and worst case scenario. But I will tell you that funding will be an issue with regards to low wealth cut, with regards to driver's ed, and with regards to out of our local current expense, we're going to have to find over $500,000 for the charter school payment, because it's a non-negotiable. That money will have to go to charter schools, and it should go to charter schools. In addition, I would like to announce publicly that the insurance carrier has settled in the matter of Jacobus versus Union County Board of Education and Easton in the amount of $5,000 on behalf of the Board of Education. And Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Ellis. We have a question.
Dr. Ellis, I know that there are some LEAs across the state that have suspended driver's ed. We have not, correct?
No, we're ready to go as soon as the state gives us
I
approval.
mean, for the summer, some
We're
people-
still driving. We have a number of students, and Dr. Jones, I know he wasn't here. Is Ms. Jones in here? Okay, both of them are outside. We are still driving students who have had coursework, and I think we were supposed to be finished driving them by the end of July. So yes, we are currently providing driver's ed for the students who've already had classwork, and we're hopeful that we will get clearance. We spend approximately $200,000 a year on instruction, but if we can do online modules, we can save $200,000. So we're ready to go with that. If the minute the state says go, we'll put out on our websites, high school websites, let's sign up for classes. So we're still driving students, but we have no plans to start new classes until DPI gives us the green light on this, because that's the way we're going to proceed as a money savings.
Thank you, Dr. Ellis.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question of Dr. Ellis.
Yes, sir. Mr. Sides.
Dr. Ellis, could you, for the folks here concerning the issue of cameras in classrooms, could you give them an update on the research that the staff is conducting on this issue?
Yes, sir. We started researching this prior to last month's board meeting. So we have worked on it, trying to, and I will tell you, closing out school took first priority. But since the closing of school, we have reached out to various entities. We've governmental research, other things to determine what was going on. We've read research. We've reached out to organizations for special education, and we have amassed this information, and we're currently going through it, and some court cases and just all kinds of information. Mr. Sides, we've also are looking at costs associated with this. And I'll give you too much information, but we're converting from one sort of platform for recording to another, and that's got to be figured in as to timeline and that kind of thing. Our plan is to take this to the Strategic Planning and Technology Committee. We hope to do that in the next 3 to 4 weeks, but that's where we are. We've been diligent about it, and I want to have the facts rather than supposition. I don't want any supposition. I just want what the facts are, and then the board can make a clean-cut decision.
Did I also understand in some correspondence this will go before the safety committee as well?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I did admit that. Go before our safety committee too. Yes, sir.
Okay. In one particular order, or both at the same time, or?
I don't know that there's a particular order, albeit when the two entities meet. Okay. I don't think there is. It's got to be probably go to safety first for a recommendation, and then go to strategic planning, because strategic planning will be comprised of all board members.
What would you recommend as a realistic time frame or timeline of how this issue would progress before it, shape and form is ready to come before us?
I will say the state of Texas undertook this in 2013, and they just passed a law recently. So I want to be diligent about it. I don't want to tarry, but I want to be diligent about it. But there are lots of questions that must be answered We met for a couple hours, must have been yesterday, and with a list of questions that we've got to go and research. And depending on how you answer question 1 is how you go to question 2 or 3, that kind of thing. So I don't want to say we'll have it for you in a month when it may take 2 months, but we are not tarrying and we're not dragging our feet. We are adding that to our to-do list.
So it's fair to say the next step is for people concerned of following the issue would be to, which of course the strategic planning committee meeting is open to the public. So when that meeting is scheduled and that's on the agenda, that will probably be the next action item, if you will, for public concern about this issue. Is that fair to say?
It will probably go to safety committee first, and then it will go to strategic planning, and that is an open meeting. So any stakeholder, anybody that wants to come and listen is more than welcome to.
How does this, to follow up, how does this play in with facilities, Mr. Stewart? I know there's the IP cameras that we're talking about from an update with the CCP. Will this go in front of facilities at all?
That is one of the concerns that facilities will address, is going from DVR to IP camera systems. If we're going to make the transition, we want to do it seamlessly and make an investment that'll be, fiduciary responsible moving forward. But yes, it will wind up back with facilities as far as any kind of proposal is concerned.
And in addition, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that this is going to have a pretty hefty price tag. And with a pretty hefty price tag, and I'm not saying you should or should not do it. I'm just, you asked for the facts, and here are the facts. And we're going to have to figure out where that money is going from which fund that money will come. It cannot come from the Exceptional Children's Fund because that's tied up in personnel and the teaching for the children. And I don't believe the state will provide any money. Of course, the state of Texas, if I remember correctly, that's an unfunded mandate in Texas. Ms. Morris, is that right? There is no money attached to it. So when you decide what you're going to do, there's going to be the huge question of funding.
Thank you, everyone. Now we have item number 9, Read to Achieve update. Dr. Jones, Ms. White, Dr. Crawford.
I would like to say good evening to board members. This is our second year of implementation of the legislation for Read to Achieve. Changes have been made through the legislation as well as from DPI regarding administration. We feel that positive changes were made this year. In Union County, our teachers were able to provide more input, as well as you have supported us as we approved an alternate assessment this year, which I think is helping us, or I know that is helping us more in students demonstrating proficiency. To give you specifics, I've asked Dr. Cindy Crawford, our Director of Elementary Education, who's responsible for administration of Read to Achieve, to update you where we are, particularly with our summer camps. Dr. Crawford.
Good evening. I'll first start off by saying this summer, as Dr. Jones said, this is our second summer implementing the summer reading camp for our third grade students who did not demonstrate reading proficiency. This summer, we do have 6 reading camp sites. One of those sites is our year-round site, and the other 5 are traditional. Our year-round site did just complete their summer reading camp last Wednesday. In the document that you have, I'll just kind of briefly walk you through it. Indian Trail is one of our traditional sites. We did have about 89 students who were projected to attend, but then after the EOGs and some of the students who passed the EOGs, actual enrollment for that campsite was 44 students. At Rayview, after EOGs and the actual student enrollment, we have 7 students attending that site. At Unionville, actual enrollment is 22. At Wingate Elementary, actual enrollment is 69. At Wesley Chapel, we have 23 students that have enrolled. And at Walter Bickett, which again just completed last week, we had 121 students who initially enrolled in that summer campsite. So Just to give you a little bit of information from the campsite at Walter Bickett, we did have 10 students who did pass the Read to Achieve out of the students who did attend the summer reading campsite. And just to note, this is optional. Parents can opt out of sending their students to summer campsite. So that is another reason for the actual enrollment. We did have more students who were eligible to attend, but after parents had that option, that number did decrease a little bit. With our third grade students who do not pass the Read to Achieve after summer camp, we are required to provide, which we do anyway, reading interventions for our third grade students who are retained, or for fourth grade students who will be promoted to a fourth grade transitional classroom. And the reading interventions that we do provide for those students are in the area of guided reading, leveled literacy intervention, strategy groups, individual student reading conferences, or shared reading. So it can be one of those or a combination of those that the teachers do provide for those students who are retained in third grade or are promoted to the fourth grade transitional classroom. Yes.
I have a couple questions. Number one, I know that there's an option to not attend summer camp, but be able to take the Read to Achieve test, because some parents have private tutoring. Do you have parents that are taking you up on that are retesting their children July 31st?
We do, and that is part of, we have a site administrator at every campsite, and so those site administrators will be contacting the students who are eligible and asking the parents if they would like to take that Read to Achieve. And actually at Walter Bickett, we did have several students who did come. They didn't attend the camp, but they did come to take the Read to Achieve at the conclusion.
So you don't know how many will show up. You're going to offer it to everybody that was eligible.
Correct. And we have those names, so we will be in contact with those parents to see if they plan to bring their child.
Okay.
Last summer, they were required, of course, to attend. So students were, if they were going to have tutoring or go to a tutoring agency, they had to submit a plan that we approved. Because it's optional this year, parents did not have to submit that.
Right. And then my second question is, you mentioned the transitional classrooms. I knew that was an option under all the Read to Achieve. So we are going to have transitional classrooms in some of our schools?
We do, yes. We plan
do already,
to.
Or we will?
We do already. This past year, we had fourth grade transitional classrooms, and this coming fall, we will.
We have it in
as well.
some schools then, right? Just but not in all schools?
They were in all schools. Mhm. They were in all
So
schools.
you had at every elementary school, there was a fourth grade transitional.
The structure that we had with the transitional program was students were receiving the fourth grade objectives, but the reading intervention that they had to be more intense based upon what their needs were. Because remember, in November, they had the chance to take the Read to Achieve test again. It's all about demonstrating that proficiency so you can have that indication moved off the record that the student has developed that. So all of our schools had transitional classes, but really what it was fourth grade classrooms, fourth grade standards with targeted instruction and reading for those skills that those students still needed.
Would they, were they taken out with a reading specialist, or was it in the classroom?
It was push-in. It was in the classroom.
Oh.
All of the reading interventions were provided in the classroom.
Oh, that's good to know. It's very seamless. I didn't
Dr.
know.
Ellis has always allowed principals to have flexibility with their funding for interventionists and to develop their plans for how they can, in the closest to the classroom, develop those intervention plans and remediation.
That's good. Thank you.
Dr. Crawford or Dr. Jones, do you have the numbers of the students that attended last year and those that passed the Read to Achieve at the end of the summer? And also those students that were in the transitional classrooms, how many passed?
We do have that information. I do not have it on hand at this moment.
We didn't bring it. Now, the plan had to be posted online, and Ms. White and her department they actually posted that plan because one of the caveats of the plan is that you have to keep parents notified. So we posted that. I don't have that number from last year handy on what we saw.
We can certainly provide
We can
that to the
provide it.
board tomorrow. It's just a matter of the information is not in the packet we prepared.
I was just curious if memory serves, it was very successful last year. And since it's the year-round school just ended, was it last week?
Yes.
Last week. Obviously, we don't have the numbers back for those yet.
I want to say, and I'm looking at Carolyn and John, that last year it was about 91% of our third graders passed off the Read to Achieve. Does that
At the end of the
at
camp?
the end of the day with every
By the time we had good cause exemptions. and,
right.
Portfolios, it was like maybe 3-4% that had to go in transition.
Right. So with because the state finally opened enough opportunities for children with different learning styles to be able to exemplify that or to show proficiency, that it was just a shade above 90% that we ended up with.
Going into the camps last year, 81% of our students had demonstrated proficiency. What we're looking at this year was 85%. So it was higher this year with some of the initiatives we put in.
Okay, and obviously it's been very successful.
But we will get those numbers for you.
Great, thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions?
Any other questions? Comment?
Thank you.
Ms. White?
Yes.
And accountability model.
Thank you. In January, we presented an alternative accountability model for South Providence and Wolf. And that was because they do not really fit into the regular accountability model. So that was option C, and that was for the 14-15 school year. Tonight, we are presenting the same option, option C, for the 15-16 school year. And with that option, what happens is that 20% is based on student persistence, which means that students are enrolled in school for the entire 15-16 school year. 20% is based on test scores, and 60% will be based on the growth, where you look at how much students grow from one year to the next. For the 14-15 year, every alternative school or school like Wolf in the entire state gets a maintaining, because they didn't have enough data, so everybody's going to be maintaining for 14-15. For 15-16 and after that, you could be called a maintaining, which would mean that your scores stay within a minus 2.9 to a plus 2.9. If you are a progressing school, it means your scores go up by at least 3. And if you are a declining school, it means your scores go down by at least 3. So that is the model that both Wolf and South Providence have chosen. So we need to just make sure you approve this in January, that you will do this again for 15-16. Any questions about the model? It seems to be the best model for those schools.
Questions? I have a motion to approve the accountability model.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the alternative accountability model participation.
Thank you, Mr. Governor.
Second.
And I have a second. I believe that was Ms. Helms. All those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Take note, it was unanimous, but Mr. Stewart is out of the room.
Okay, thank you.
Now we have item number 11, driver's education update. Dr. Ellis, Dr. Jones, Ms. Morris.
Driver's education has been somewhat of a boondoggle with the General Assembly. Mr. Fletcher Hartzell came to the board's legislative breakfast, if you'll remember, and shared with the folks there that there was no research to support driver's ed making a positive difference for student drivers. But I've also read other studies where the student mortality rate in accidents is like 35% less with driver's ed. So I don't know what all the research they're looking at. I don't know which studies they're looking at. But the bottom line is we have been trying since March to get the state to allow us to do online. Our bill last year total was $993,000 and some change, right at $1 million. And we figured we could save between $200,000 and $250,000 with the online instruction. And we do that, it would be in modules, and one person could oversee it for all the ninth graders. And I think we have between 2,000 and 3,000 ninth graders. I think it's about 2,700 and some change, if memory serves me. All these numbers run together, but that's about the number of ninth. Is it? Okay. When all this came about and they said, continue driver's ed and use what money you can find, we're not funding it right now. We had about a month's worth of driving of students who had already had the classwork that we needed to drive them behind the wheel. We hope to finish that. We will be finished by the end of the month with that. And it's really funny because the gentleman that had been sort of stonewalling us at every turn is no longer employed because his position was cut out because of the cuts with driver's ed. So now we have another gentleman with whom we're conversing, and I know him to be, from past experiences, a very fair man. I don't know what his answer is going to be, but he is responsive, and we'll get back to you. And I think we found out that after 5 p.m. today, and I believe Ms. Jones has already contacted Dr. Matthews to see. So our driver's ed, and Dan came to me and said, Dr. Ellis, we're supposed to continue driver's ed with available funds. You tell me what funds are available because we've got to pay charter schools, and we've been cut with, I will tell you, I've informed principals that I'm cutting their special projects money by 65% because of the low wealth cut. And that money comes straight from the state. And when they cut us, we had to cut them. So we're hopeful that while we're still driving, we've got a little money that we can do to finish up the driving, that we will be allowed to do the online classwork, because if we don't, we're going to have to make some tough decisions about what's going to go on. I did check with the other LEAs, and of the 100 and I think Ed NC posted an article last Friday of the 115 LEAs, school systems, about 30 were still offering, going gung-ho with driver's ed. Everybody else was looking around to see, what they needed to do, and everybody's got to finish up the students that were driving. So, Dr. Jones, any comments you want to make about driver's ed?
No, ma'am. Dr. Ellis, can I ask a question? So the online modules will save us $200,000 roughly, right?
Closer to $250,000, but at least $200,000.
But that leaves a delta of still about 500, 600,000?
About 700,000.
Okay, 700,000.
Yes,
so
sir.
What's the ideas for these 700,000?
Well, we
besides
asked.
canceling.
Well, and the law says we can't cancel, so.
Some LEAs are, right?
Well, they're just dragging their feet, let's
Okay.
say. I don't think anybody, I've not heard one superintendent say, I've canceled. First of all, we put it in our budget for the county commissioners asking for funding, and then it looked like it was going to be saved. And it may still be, Mr. Martin. I truly do not understand some of the reasoning behind some of the things that's going on in Raleigh right now. So I'm not going to say that it may be funded. If it is not funded and the LEA is mandated, that is an unfunded mandate for us of about $1 million, it's going to hurt. And 86% of our everything is tied up in personnel. And I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that it was going to be some kind of person cut, because of that's where the majority of our funding comes from. We don't have a plan for it, because in all honesty, I don't think the state can afford, I don't think the General Assembly can afford just to say, you've got to pay for it. I think they'll come up with a plan. The Senate's plan is parents pay for it. And the House's plans is use lottery money for 1 year, and then we'll find another funding source. I really don't believe they're going to leave the LEAs holding the bag on that, because every LEA has 1/13 of their student population in ninth grade. So that's pretty strong incentive for them to come up with something. And I really think that we'll be in the abyss till October. But if we can get the online, we can go ahead and run the online and probably not spend over $60,000 or $70,000. And that is doable. It's a lot more doable than almost $1 million.
So we can feed the funnel, the start of the funnel.
We can start it.
But it still leaves us with the on the road.
Right, it still leaves us with the on the road, and I'll tell you, that's where the money is gobbled up. Some LEAs have contracted with driving schools, and we've looked at that. We've looked at putting out a request, and we're ready to do that. But no driving company is going to, if we put it out and then we say, "Oh, just kidding," they're not going to. We have no credibility. So we've got some stuff ready to go once we see what the state's going to do. But it is very unfortunate that it all hinges on what people who have little to no knowledge of schooling, what their decisions are going to be. Mhm.
Any other comments about the driver's ed? Let's go to number 12, the budget update with Dr. Webb and Mr. Karpinski. I'm assuming this is mostly Mr. Karpinski right here.
I'll start it off and Dr. Webb will follow with most of the capital comments, but Dr. Ellis did a good job of explaining where we are with the state budget. I'll just mention a couple things about that. There is the governor's budget out there, the House budget, Senate's budget. You know, these budgets are so far apart, and we're talking about a delta of over $234 million. So we don't really know where it's going to fall. If the Senate's version comes through, we're talking about having to cut right at 70 TAs. So that would be a big hurt on the elementary schools, of course. Driver's ed, we've talked a lot about that. Low wealth funding, that really is formula driven. So that $750,000 or thereabout is formula driven, done deal. We had already cut the schools. Right now, as of July 1st, we're acting pretty much based on the governor's budget. The governor's budget was somewhat between the House and the Senate, but there are some caveats to that. We're using the classroom teacher numbers except for the reduced class sizes. So that's one of the big caveats that doesn't help us. We're almost in a status quo pattern.
And I want to talk a little bit about the reduced class size in K-3. That sounds wonderful, but we can't find teachers for the classrooms we have already. So, and I've said this to our legislators, I'm not saying a thing to you, I've not said to them, where in the world do you think I'm going to find extra teachers when I can't find enough teachers to fill up the classrooms where they are now?
Well, I have a question in regards to that, Dr. Ellis.
Okay.
If they're going to plan on, I know one of the proposals out there is to reduce classroom sizes through the K through third. Well, if we do that, are they continuing with the same amount of assessments that are in there now?
Now let's talk a little bit about assessments. Right now, it appears the testing commission is going to recommend that instead of one EOG a year, we're going to do quarterly assessments. And they say they will be shorter and not as much stress. My experience with the North Carolina testing program over 37 years has never been less stress or less testing. It has been more.
Okay, another question I have, if they're going to reduce classroom sizes, obviously we have to have more classrooms. Where's that going to come from?
Well, a lot of it, and this goes back to me having been a teacher, you can put whatever number of students in the classroom comfortably, but you can have more than one certified instructor in there. Before, I would say we would explore doing team teaching and that kind of thing first when we ran out of available classrooms. And, you know, if you put an extra 4 or 5 students in a third grade classroom, you could have 25 students in there comfortably, and you could have team teaching. And that's certainly doable.
So if one of their proposals is to have a classroom of one teacher, 17 students. So that would be essentially adding 30 plus students to one classroom with 2 possible teachers.
I see what you're saying, but not necessarily, because I might be your reading teacher and Donna might be your math teacher, you know, that kind of thing.
And you're co-teaching. I understand the principle behind it. But essentially, you'll have a classroom with 2 teachers and 30 plus students.
Possibly. It depends. I mean, that could happen, yes. But it could very easily not happen too, depending upon the number and the way you split kids and the way you sort kids and with their assessments and that kind of thing. They have, now I will tell you that one of the things I've read is that schools can ask for waivers if they run out of space to put these teachers. Really.
So mobile classrooms would be possibly come back into our, these are possibilities.
I'm not biting on that one.
Yeah, these are just possibilities that we have to look into If this is
I
what
can
the state's
assure you the
mandating.
state will not pay for mobile classrooms.
Yeah, well, they're not paying for a whole lot. Let's face facts.
It would be up to the LEA to determine
Okay.
what, and we've already started looking at some of our schools and saying, what would we do? And Dr. Jones is an elementary classroom teacher, and we've explored the elementary level in depth about the where, the how, and the what. So it's, we will be ready with some kind of plan, but I'll let Dan talk to you about taking the money away from teacher assistants and putting it in teachers and the total numbers. I think that'll be very enlightening.
Yeah, yeah, no problem. That is critical because they've been pretty much forcing us to use TA money to keep our class sizes reasonable. So we've done some of that, which will help. It's probably noteworthy to talk about the fact that the Senate's budget's the only one that really changes class sizes, and it's totally on the backs of TAs. So us being proactive with, using some of that funding for teachers to begin with helps us. But the equivalent of the 70 TA positions would be the equivalent of 35 teachers that we would gain from it. But they're so far apart. Governor has nothing in there for teachers. House has nothing in there. Senate has that plan.
And that's why I just want to make sure that none of us knee-jerk react to it, because somewhere in the great abyss, it will land out, and we're working plans for both ends of the spectrum as well as sort of in the abyss.
And as I mentioned earlier, we're working off the governor's budget except for textbooks, and that's one thing that's going to be very difficult. There is a substantial amount of textbook in each of the budgets, the governor, the House, and the Senate, but they're saying, don't use the governor's budget nor any other budget in terms of any increase to textbooks. Well, I hope those textbooks will help us in the second semester is about all I can say on that. And that pretty much wraps up between what Dr. Ellis already said about everything else. Those are our top three concerns: driver's ed, teacher assistance, low wealth funding, and of course, anything else that revolves around a swap out between teachers and teacher assistants.
I have a question. So I know that I attended a press conference that says the Senate budget, it would cut about 8,500 TAs across the state. So you're saying that Union County's portion of that is 70 TAs?
Correct. My understanding of it is exactly what you said, and they said that equates to 52%. And of course, our using some of the TA money to reduce class sizes to begin with helps us, but our cut will be 70 TA positions if the Senate budget goes through as they propose.
We've got 239 right now.
No, we're down to 210.
210. We're down to 210.
And that's all attrition.
Yes.
That's right. We've been
Yes.
trying to do all this by
I
attrition.
think that needs to be clear.
We're
We
trying
haven't been
hard
giving
not
people
to
pink
remove
slips.
bodies, right?
However, if the hammer comes down and the Senate does this fully, we don't have a choice but to cut 70.
And the reason it will not be as draconian, although it is to us as to other LEAs, is for the past several years, we have reduced class size by trading teacher assistant money in for teachers. And that was a decision fully supported by our principals at the elementary, the middle, and the high level to make sure that we got the class size down as low as we could with a certified professional. So,
And that was also through attrition.
yes, sir. Yes.
So even if the Senate number takes us down to 70, takes away 70, we would still be able, based on what we normally fund, would we be able to offset that? I mean, I guess that's a decision.
No, that would be an additional 70 that we'd have to
Additional
reduce.
70. Now-
What wouldn't happen is our class sizes wouldn't reduce as much as what the Senate would say, because we've already reduced them to some degree to keep them reasonable for this year or this past year.
Now, if the Senate's version goes through, we will have to remove people from positions in teacher assistants. I do not believe the Senate's version as it stands now will go through. I've talked with a number of folks, I'm just going to be quiet about that, about some of the folks said, well, here's what I think, but you can't use my name, and they're in Raleigh. And we have not removed any people from teacher assistant positions. Dan, am I right about that?
It's all been through
It's
attrition.
been through attrition, and that is the preferable way, is from when people decide to leave rather than, and we've talked about, well, do we make them 85% employees, or do we only employ them 180 days plus 3 days? And we finally decided that, we are literally whistling in the wind with all of this supposition. If they come back and say, we've got to cut 70 positions, we're going to have to cut positions, not percentages of employment. But I'm not knee jerking on that, because I don't think it's going to be that bad. Now, I may be proven to be wrong, but I cannot, right, that would be worst case scenario.
Very good. So we'll move on to the local budget. The county appropriation was increased by $4.8 million. That will afford us the ability to increase our line item costs for utility costs, nearly what was requested. We also would be able to afford, if passed, the governor's proposed teacher pay increase. We also would be able to afford the retirement and health insurance that the state would mandate those increases going up. We would be able to afford the COLA and or compensation adjustment of 1.6% for non-certified employees. And then we'd be able to afford $2.5 million for teacher supplements, an increase to teacher supplements. Of course, that particular delta was the greatest compared to what the Board of Education was wanting to do. We wanted to get our teacher supplements closer to market, which would have been about to 14%. Right now, our supplements are below 7%, and this would take us between 8 and 9%, depending on where you are on a schedule. Because we're probably going to keep it at a dollar amount as opposed to a strict percentage. So with that is the update on the current expense. Everything else that was requested would not be able to be funded, and we are going to have to find the money for the charter schools because the county has given us $4.8 million more. State law says that we have to give the charter schools, and we right now fund 16 charter schools because our Union County resident students attend those charter schools. So the money follows the children, and based on my best calculation, that's going to cost us $520. It's really $519 and change, $520,000. It's a bill that's coming. We just have to pay it, unless, of course, their students don't grow the small amount that I think that they were going to grow compared to our growth. So there is an adjustment for per pupil calculation on that. We are going to have to find the money for insurance, which was $45,000. And then depending on the Senate's budget, we might have to find $49,495 because that would be something that's mandated, not funded by the state, but then we'd have to pick it up locally.
And also, if they mandate driver's ed and provide zero funding, we will have to foot the bill for that.
Yeah, and ultimately, like I've said many times, if it, the wording that they used was, no funds are made available for driver's ed. However, LEAs are required to offer non-credit driver education courses in high schools and are authorized to charge participants a fee of up to $65. So that would be where we get some of the dollars, and or utilize other state or local funds for this purpose. Well, I've said this to the board many times. If we use state funds, then that means we got to cut something from the state fund that typically would fall on the local fund. Because if you push it off the state, you got to pay for it with the local. Then if you decide you can't pay for it with local, then it's just a flat out cut. So everything you do in the school system either falls on the state, local, or federal budgets, and then your local budget is your catch-all for anything that could happen, and or charges that need to be paid for. So that's the state budget in a nutshell and the local current expense. I'm just going to say a brief introduction on capital. Dr. Webb will talk about it further. We asked for $19.7 million for capital. The county funded $16.6 million of that. And Dr. Webb will talk about that delta and some of the things that are going on in the capital arena.
Thanks, Dan. Good evening. Let's break down the 16.6 that the county's provided. Taking a look, 9.6 million, I'll work in approximate numbers, $9.6 million of that 16.6 will go to fund roofing projects as listed on the CCEP. Again, approximately $9.6 million for roofing. They have project-based us, so they're, in other words, they're telling us what projects that we have to complete. They have given us approximately $2.5 million to address some projects at Antioch, Benton Heights, East Elementary, Indian Trail, and Parkwood High. The largest ticket item out of that 2.5 is the sewer system at New Salem, which is a $1.5 million project. So that when you look at that, you've got approximately $1 million in those other schools as smaller projects. They provided another $1.9 million and identified that those funds would go to Benton Heights as listed on the CCEP. And that's from classroom renovations, et cetera. Again, you can look that up on the CCEP. They provided approximately $1.3 million to migrate us from the DVR platform, which is our camera system at our schools, to an IP platform or an internet platform. You know the advantages to moving to the internet platform. We'll be able to add additional cameras. We'll be able, right now, our DVR systems range from 7 to 21 days that we can store information. We'll be able to expand that amount of storage when it comes to keeping that type of information based on the amount of space we have when we spin up a virtual server. They provided $1 million for technology/buses. Again, all of those were project-based, and that should total up to right around $16.6 million.
Dr. Webb, what was the total amount if you add up all the project-based stuff? Because you said IP and New Salem and the 2.5 for Antioch, Benton Heights, et cetera. Taking out the $1 million for tech and buses, what was the total improvement project amount?
Including roofs.
Not including roofs, taking the roofs out.
Taking the roofs out, 1.3 and 1.9. So that's 3.2.
And then 2.5.
And then 2.5.
Is that 6.7? Did I have that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's a quick overview of the capital dollars provided by the county. Any questions?
Dr. Webb, one question here for the benefit of the rest of the board. I'm already familiar with the answer, but as far as the items that were cut from capital, can you elaborate on those a little and be a segue into your next presentation?
One of the largest items cut from the budget was the $2 million for preventative/emerging issues. The $2 million that we placed in there was not just a number pulled out of the air. We looked at the data, what we typically have as emerging issues that hits the school system throughout a year. Things that's unplanned, just like at your home. The roof starts leaking, you replace it, or if the water heater goes out, you have to replace it. And that's typically ranges anywhere from $1.2 to $2 million. So when we were working with Mr. Yates, we had agreed that 10% would be a fair number to place in the budget for those type of items, and that's that $2 million. And we felt comfortable from a facility side that would meet our emerging issues. So that $2 million was cut. And if you remember the Benton Heights roof project, we were able to get to that roofing project, and that had been left on there. So that $500,000 was removed. So that would have been 2.5. And I think that's pretty close to the 19 and change that we asked for. So, I take that back. There was about $650,000 that we asked for those dollar figures for those projects were really calculated from comprehensive facility studies from 2008-9. And we know that we're not purchasing a lot of things in 2015-16 for what we priced out in 2008-9. And you really won't know those true dollars until you push them out to bid.
Dr. Webb, as a follow-up, and moving into the emerging capital needs that we see before us here tonight, are some of those items that have been cut from the capital allocation crucial in nature and critical that we move on fairly quickly for repair?
Absolutely. Ranging from the chiller at Weddington High School.
Please explain to the layperson what a chiller does.
It's your air conditioning unit. So it's your heat and air, whether you have a 2-pipe or a 4-pipe system that's running there. So, and they range in prices. Unfortunately, this one's an expensive one based upon the size of them. It's about, we're guessing, around $150,000 for that chiller alone to replace.
So Weddington High School will not have air conditioning in part of the building when school starts back. Is that accurate?
That's correct. It's limping along, and we need to make sure that we order that and have it installed prior to school
What
starting.
percent now? I think you told me 52% last time we talked.
About half.
Okay. Okay, so there are 2 chillers and one is broken,
That's correct.
and we're not given money to replace them.
That's correct. And that would have been covered within that emerging issue, that $2 million that we had asked for. I did.
You jumped into this.
Yes.
I was just going to ask questions. Is it okay, Mr. Chair?
Certainly.
Since we're on Weddington High School, I noticed Weddington High School, we have a boiler replacement. So is it fair to say that Weddington would not have air or heat?
If you really think of it, it's really a hot water heater, but when it gets to certain gallons, they refer to them as a boiler. Okay. So that's in the cafeteria, if memory serves me correctly. It's in the kitchen, so.
Dr. Webb, would it be fair to say that all these emerging needs that were cut from the capital budget, and I think you can detail them for us, but all of them have a direct correlation with the structural integrity of the building, the heating and cooling of building, safety, health as far as like sewer issues, that sort of thing?
Absolutely.
These aren't just maybe we need to do it, but these are critical items we need to address, correct?
These are not a wish list of items.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Would you please explain to the board what you explained to me about the 2 options we have about the top of Monroe School? Was it high school or middle school?
It's the middle school.
Explain
We're
that.
finishing a roofing project at Monroe Middle School. And once, if you remember when we went to Wingate and we're working on the roof there, we looked at the HVAC pieces there on the roof. Well, those are natural gas units, and the bases of those have rusted out. So one of 2 things are going to happen if we don't replace those units on top of Monroe Middle School. Either the ventilators are going to pull carbon monoxide into the building, or like I said with Dr. Ellis, the other option is one of them's going to explode. So it's not an option for us to make those repairs.
Is that on? Sorry.
It is.
Okay. So basically, if I understand this correctly, rather than give us for lack of a better term, a pot of money that we projected we would need to use for these type projects, the county is basically saying, come to us on a project basis and let us approve it that way, more or less piecemeal, rather than we're going to give you $2 million because you know you're going to have these things go on every year. That's basically what happened?
Besides, I'm want to speak, I'm not aware of that agreement
What we've been told.
from staff.
And what I've been told from county commissioners, and anybody else that's heard this can verify it, is that they would prefer that we not have an emerging needs fund, but that as needs surface that are critical to our operation, we come to them and ask for funds to support those needs, to replace whatever needs to be replaced or to add whatever needs to be added. We've been told this on a number of occasions, and not just myself. I think other people have heard it. I think at this point, what we're doing is we're putting a list together of these, and we're calling them emerging needs, but they are things that we may have had on our facility plan, and we may not, because of when they came along in the timeline.
These issues would not have been on a CCEP. These are emerging issues. Structural engineer looked at the warehouse, the old gym at Old Fairview. We can't have anyone in that building when the winds are above 30 miles per hour, fear that it's going to collapse. That building has to be torn down. Asbestos must be abated from that facilities. So these are things, again, and this it's 1.2 million, some change. There will be additional emerging issues that come up. I mean, folks, it's early July.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, again, this thing is really hot. It seems like from a responsible and kind of conservative approach to finances, that we look at our historical use of this type of money, and like you're saying, it's between 1.2 and 2 million. So we need to plan for the unexpected.
That's correct.
Right. If we go through the process, as you discussed, Chairman Collins, and going to the county every time a need emerges, some of these needs need to be addressed immediately. And there is obviously a time period that has to go by to get an approval. I'm not quite sure what that is, but what's our response to taking care of an emerging and a necessary fix if we don't have those funds planned for and planned for and available?
May I clarify something? To be just as honest as I can be, anytime I've asked the county manager for funding for something of this nature, I have been told no. On one occasion, it was not even taken to the full Board of County Commissioners. She and the then chair determined that it would not happen. I have not had exampled for me of when we have needs for the county commission to fund it. Now, I'm hopeful they will. Hope springs eternal in the human breast. But as I have lived this journey, that has not happened.
And Mr. Guzman is correct. A lot of these projects, when you're dealing with mechanical issues, are very time sensitive. Materials must be ordered. You have to think of installation. A lot of this work is done in the summertime when you see these, they start popping up, and you want to go in and you want to address these. Again, these are emerging, like direction on how you would like for Dr. Ellis to direct me to proceed.
And if I may interrupt for a moment, if our funds had been granted, we would already be putting these out to bids as we speak. Am I correct?
That is correct.
So now, the scenario that we have, best case scenario, is that we ask the county commissioners for this additional funding, and it's going to put these projects back during this critical summer time another 30 days. Am I correct?
I don't want to say it'll be 30 days. I don't know how long it will take for them to act, if they act. But Don, how long will it take for a chiller to order and come in?
Well, usually you can't go to Lowe's and buy a chiller. Or a boiler.
Home Depot?
No.
It usually takes a month or two. Sometimes a couple months to get a chiller. Once you have a bid and you accept the bids, then they have a PO, then they'll start making the chiller.
And my guess is the parents at Weddington High School will not be very understanding about their children not having hot water in the cafeteria, or about one of the wings of the school not being air conditioned. That's just my 2 cents.
It looks like we have two options. I'm sorry, Mr. Go ahead.
I was going to go ahead and offer a motion, given the exigent circumstance of some of these items, and taking the county commissioners at their word, that they will entertain emerging issues and allocate as needed. I'd like to see this process, these items forwarded by the superintendent over to the county manager, and ask that these items be placed on the next agenda for the county commissioners to hear this. And also any items, we would ask that they would give us consideration in any items such as a chiller or a HVAC unit, or in case of, say, potential structural failure, I think was mentioned, anything that's truly of an exigent nature, that they entertain emergency purchasing to expedite that. And I think when we send it over, we need to make sure that we explain why we need to act quickly on this. We don't need this bogged down in the bureaucracy for 60 days. So I would offer that in the form of a motion, Mr. Chair.
Can I ask, before anybody seconds that, if we can amend that slightly to include the driver's ed money that is needed? In the past, the county has advanced us or okayed us that sort of money. When we had an issue with the TAs, we asked for 1.65, and we agreed that if the state funded it, we would return that money, which we did.
I don't think we need to mix facilities with driver's ed at this point in time.
Yeah, and I fully support the concept of asking for the pre-allocation on driver's ed money, but I'd be a little reluctant to muddy the issue, quite frankly, with amendment. I'd like to address that as a separate call.
I agree.
All right.
I second Mr. Stewart's motion.
So I have a motion and I have a second to present this list through staffs and to all the commissioners, and copy all of us on it. And I will make it a point to talk to Commissioner Helms, Chairman Helms also, personally.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do we have an order of importance?
All of them. And I'm not meaning that. When you look at the ADA issues, the OCR, you know that we went through the review. That's just at our 10 high schools, and that's just scratching the surface. They will be tens of thousands of dollars.
I'm not saying not to ask for it, but I'm going down Dr. Ellis's. I mean,
Yep.
trying to be hopeful that we go with this list, and they say, okay, but in the event, they say we can give you half. Do we have an order? I mean, I know it's like you're going to have hot, cold people.
So we
hot
decide what to
people.
shut down after we find out how much we've got.
Okay, I just don't think that they're going to just give us a dollar amount. They're going to say, which projects do you want? That's all I'm asking, is to be
I
prepared.
think this is what we will forward, our list.
Right, I'm just trying to be proactive with what I'm pretty sure we will come back, we asked.
Well, and the intention, Mr. Chair, of my motion as well was to provide adequate documentation, break this list out. I'm sure Dr. Webb already has a lot of this in place, but to make sure that we have a detailed accounting of each item, why it's of an exigent circumstance, and also why this can't be pushed off any further. I mean, the justifications are there. We give it to them, let them make a decision, then we'll respond
I'd
appropriately.
be more than glad to sit down with Mr. Yates and go project by project and answer and address any questions that he may have, so that he can share that information with the county manager and the county commissioners.
And I would ask that you would talk about number 12, the vehicle replacement, because some folks will say, well, that's not important when you're talking about comparing to a chiller. Would you please explain that item?
You know, it comes down to, we spent one of the vehicles, $11,000 towards the end of the year for maintenance when we reviewed the reports. You can buy a brand new one for 22. I think the county expects me to be a little better steward of their funds and put another $11,000 in that van. That's a 1998 van with over 200,000 miles on it. So the other vehicle, similar situation, close to 6,000, 1998 vehicle, about 190,000 miles on it. So when you start talking about the vehicle and they're not, you know, one of them runs the courier. Important to get the information back and forth to our schools on a timely basis. It runs every day, except in the summer where it runs twice a week. The other two vehicles are our maintenance vehicles. It's the vehicles that our men are driving to go meet the needs of our students and teachers in our facilities. So we've not purchased vehicles in a while. our vehicles are starting to age. Matter of fact, I think this is the first one that's not been a large box truck. I think was the last one we ordered, but I can't think of the last vehicle we purchased in a few years.
So at this point, I have a motion and a second. Do I have any more comments or questions? Then I suggest everyone in favor of that motion, please raise their hand and say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can we double back to item number 12 or 11 now and clean up your request for funding for driver's ed?
Yeah, I'd like to change number 11 from informational to action and suggest that based on past actions with the county commissioners, they've been very understanding about guaranteeing us that money up front so that we may continue programs. And I think that it would behoove us to ask the commissioners if they would essentially front that $750,000 if, in the odd chance, the General Assembly does not grant us that driver's ed money. And if it is granted, we will return it to them. Ms. Marsh?
Can you amend the agenda first and change it?
We have to amend the agenda. It's an item that's on here. We'll just
You
change
have it
it.
for information, I just change it to action.
Okay.
Motion to amend agenda to action item for number 11.
I have that motion,
Second.
and I have several seconds. Pick the one you'd like. All those in favor of amending the agenda to that item? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, it's unanimous. Thank you, Ms. Mars, for keeping me on the straight and narrow. Back to what I was saying. I would entertain a motion to do what I've discussed.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, that amount would be $752,860. $752,860.
May I just be clear? May I?
Yes,
okay.
yes, please.
Two requests of send to the full Board of County Commissioners, CC the full Board of Education, and also the county manager. Present a list requesting funding from the emerging needs you talked about tonight, and also the same audience to fund driver's ed in the amount of $752,860 if necessary. And as with the teacher assistant money, if we determine that the state will fund it, we will return that to the county. And by the way, when we did receive it, we did return every penny of it.
Even though it's showed on the CAFR?
Even though it's still showing on the CAFR.
In the budget.
And, excuse me, in the budget, I'm sorry, that we are receiving that 1.65. We are not, right, Dan?
There was a couple of years back, it was in our budget to begin with. We gave the money back. Of course, the budget doesn't change, but the actual numbers change, and that was the point to be made.
And to answer your question, yes to one of those, no to the other. We haven't voted on it yet.
I understand, but that 752, does that take into account if our online classroom is approved for driver's ed? If it isn't, then we got to bump that number up, right?
We should be able to collect the $65 still to make up the difference.
$65 may be able to cover it that we charge, that we're allowed to
Okay,
charge.
so we're okay for the difference.
But I'll even
Either
go better than that. If we can take it out to bid and get it at a reduced rate and save money from the $752,000, whatever if they give us 752, we'll return what we don't use of it. It is not, we just simply want to provide driver's ed for children. I'm not trying to make a dollar on this.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Opposed? Seeing none, it's unanimous. Thank you again. And now, as we skip through this nice agenda, we're up to number 14, policies for review.
Good evening. We have, I believe, 2 policies for your review tonight, correct? 4, I'm sorry, I was looking at the first page. 4 policies for your review today. We are trying to get through the policies that are up for review as part of your regular review process. And policy 2-50, settlement of claims, is one of those policies. It's up for your regular review. If anybody has any questions?
Go straight to 3-6.
Okay, 3-6. This one is also up for review as part of your regular review. There are no proposed changes to that policy. Okay, no questions?
5-4.
5-4, interscholastic athletics. This is also up for your regular review, and there are some proposed changes to that. Anybody have any questions on that?
5-18.
5-18 is the final one up for your review, day treatment program, and that is also up as part of your regular review. And it does have some proposed changes to be more consistent with the program that we're offering at this point.
Thank you.
Okay.
I see no comments. We'll move to 15, policies for approval. We've already seen these last month.
You have.
Back to policy.
4-17 went to policy committee, came back before you for review at the last meeting, went back to policy committee, and this is the recommendation from policy committee with changes that were proposed by the committee.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve policy 4-17, student dress and appearance. This does come from policy committee, so it does not need a second.
Thank you. Are there any additional comments? All those in favor of adopting 417 the way it stands, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. 423.
All right, student sex offender policy. This policy went to policy committee and came before you at the last board meeting for review, went back to policy committee, and is here again after policy committee met.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve policy 4-23, student sex offenders. This does come from policy committee, so it does not need a second, sir.
Any other comments? All those in favor of approving 423, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Seeing none, it's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to 16, closed session decisions. I believe I would need a motion approving closed session personnel decisions, including one contract amendment in that decision. Do I have that motion?
I'll make that motion, sir.
Thank you. And I have it seconded by Mr. Stewart. All those in favor of those decisions, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Thank you. It's unanimous. And I think that was all that we had from closed session, correct?
The contract.
We had personnel.
Oh, and the contract, that's right.
Had the bid.
The contract was for the Benton Heights Elementary partial re-roofing bid that we did in closed session, and now we have to come out and approve it in open session. All those in favor of that, it comes from
Facilities, move to approve.
all those in favor of that, please raise their hand and say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, and I think that was it. Yes. And we're up to comments of the board. Does any board members have any comments?
I have one.
Ms. Boyd?
This is basically for any constituents that are here or that may be listening. I would ask that if there's anything that you've heard here tonight in regard to funding, we've talked about TAs, teacher assistants, we've talked about driver's ed funding, a multitude of other funding. I urge you to reach out to your Senate in Union County. That would be Senator Tommy Tucker or Senator Fletcher Hartzell. That seems to, the House seems to have a pretty good handle on our needs and I'm willing to get that done. I would urge you all to call them. Mass emails we've heard don't really work, write them a note or call them because we are really in some dire times right now. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Anything else?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to compliment the board for taking the stance of working with the county commissioners on funding this year. I think we've extended the olive branch, if you will. I think the way we're looking at things are somewhat different. We recognize the paradigms in which they wish to proceed, and we're moving in that direction. So I just am glad we're not talking about things like mediation and lawsuits and that sort of thing. I'm proud of this board for stepping up and doing the right thing for the citizens of Union County.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Announcements. Meetings.
7/21 at 07:30 be in the boardroom at Central Administration Facilities.
Thank you. Might remind board members of appeals over the next month. Be aware of your schedules.
Tuesday.
That was the Tuesday. I'll have appeals that morning. Can you get this? Are we gonna get it done in 30 minutes?
Well, we haven't done it.
Would you rather start at 6:30?
I prefer not.
Yes.
Yes.
I think we can likely finish in 30 minutes. It's going to be a light agenda, and if we don't really have anything, we'll wave it off.
It'll be very light.
I will keep you up to speed and make sure, I'm always expeditious when I'm facilities. We'll take care of it in 15 minutes.
But put 6:30 on your agenda anyway. Plus deltas?
I'd like to thank the PDC for the wonderful hospitality.
That'd be Marty.
I'd like to thank everyone for bearing with us, me in particular. I'm waiting for a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
I've got a motion and an echo for second. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. We're adjourned.